Hey guys, Marissa here. I just want to say thank you so much for listening to another episode of Digital Nomad Family Podcast. And this episode is part one of a 4-part series all about family leadership. And before we get into this episode, which is an amazing interview with a woman named Tiphini Axtell, which you're going to love it. She shares so much in this, and I can't wait for you to listen to it. But before we get to that, I want to kind of give a general overview of what this series is, the hope for it, and kind of where we're going with it. So we're going to have 3 episodes, each focusing on a particular area of our family that we as parents need to lead well. We're going to have a physical health, a mental health, and a spiritual health. The one you are listening to right now is the mental health episode, and each episode will be an interview with someone talking about that particular area of our family, why we should lead it well, how we can lead it well, and just kind of get their take on it. And I'm really excited for all of these interviews for you guys to listen to them. The last episode in this series is going to be a goal setting episode for our families. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 3 areas, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual health, and we're going to say, okay, now how can we set some goals as a family in these areas? And we're going to walk through how to set goals, how to set appropriate and good goals. And it's going to be a fantastic, I think, just series to help us think about leading our families well in this area. Now, to go along with this series, we have actually created a goal-making guide that you can get on our website, familyofdashes.com. So if you go down to the show notes, you can actually click on a link to go over and get that goal-setting guide. And you can totally get it to go along with the first 3 episodes, but in the last episode of this series, we're going to be walking through that guide and using it to learn how to make goals as a family. And so just a heads up for the last part of this 4-part series, you are going to want to go over there and get that guide. So I'm just giving you a heads up now about it. So I hope that you guys are encouraged by this episode with Tiphini and just get something out of her amazing just heart at the subject of mental health. And full disclosure, my audio isn't great in this, so please forgive me. I know it's not. I had to record it in a way that isn't ideal, but I hope that you give me some grace on that. And hopefully from now on, the rest of the interviews will be better. So I apologize for that. But what I have to say is not nearly as important and insightful as what Tiphini tells you. So it's going to be okay if you can't understand me that well. She is the one that you want to listen to. So without me talking anymore, let's get into this. Hey there, and welcome to the Digital Nomad Family Podcast. This is the place where families who have or want to have a nomadic lifestyle come together to talk about the highs and lows that this life brings. We celebrate the joys and support each other in the hard. So, if you are a digital nomad family or will be in the future, this is the place for you. We're glad you're here. Hey guys, my guest today is an amazingly smart woman, much smarter than me when it comes to learning about leading our family's mental health well. Her name is Tiphini Axtell, and 2 awesome things I really want you to know about her so you can welcome her into our community is that in December, her and her family are going on their test trip because they're going to become full-time nomads this summer. Woohoo! Welcome to the club. It's exciting. And probably the coolest story I've ever heard, and I cannot wait for her to share it with you guys, is she once saved their bearded dragon with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And I just think that is the best story ever. So Tiphini, welcome to the podcast. We're so glad to have you here at Digital Nomad Family Podcast. Before we get into anything related to mental health, please tell us about the bearded dragon story.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're excited, or I'm excited to be here. Yeah, the bearded dragon story is probably one of the most interesting things about me. We have two bearded dragons, and my daughter was giving our girl bearded dragon Juno a bath in the sink one day, and she came out and was like, "Mommy, look, Juno's sleeping." And she wasn't sleeping, she had drowned. My daughter had put the water a little too high, and the dragon had drowned. So I don't know. I guess it was like mom instincts, because I've never been trained in CPR and reptiles, but I picked her up and I kind of did a little bit of like compressions with my pinky, because she was a smaller dragon. And then I put my mouth over her snout and her mouth and gave her some little breaths. And the next thing I know, she was awake, and she was alert enough for us to drive to the vet. And they literally like put her in a shoebox with oxygen. And my husband was sort of like, "Why do we have a $200 vet bill for the bearded dragon?"
Oh my God. What did your daughter think about you after? Like, did she like totally just think that you are a superhero? Because that's the coolest mom move ever, to be like, "Yes,
I don't know. I should actually ask her like her thoughts on that. It's a story that the kids tell. So I think, obviously made an imprint and they were impressed. But it was also one of those nights that we're like getting ready to go to a holiday performance for their school. So it was like in the midst of, getting something ready for a potluck and then dressed, this happened. So
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is seriously, I'm trying to think about a more like out there story. And I've heard some, like, that's probably like the coolest one. I don't know if I would have done it.
I didn't really think about it. It just sort of happened. You know what I mean? So yeah. I guess I'm a good person to have around in case of an emergency.
How you said I'm not trained in reptile CPR. Now I need to Google, is that even a thing?
I'm sure it probably is, right?
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Well, I feel like there is zero way to transition smoothly into the topic of mental health after that. And maybe that's good. I don't know. I can't see a smooth transition. So I guess we'll just kind of jump in from there.
Okay.
With this idea of mental health and leading our family well in their mental health. And so I guess I just would start off with why would you say that the mental health of our families matters? Is this something that parents could even be considering?
Yes, absolutely. And before I go into deep to any of the questions, I do want to preface this by saying I'm speaking as a parent of older children. So I have 4 kids, almost 12, 14, 15, and 21. And our oldest son has, some mental health issues that we've dealt with. So I think it's very important from all ages, but I'm just speaking as a parent to, teens and tweens in the house. So
yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, but I think it's super important. I think that, there's a current mental health crisis in America, particularly. We see it in the news and in the streets every day. I know I'm seeing it in our own community here in New Mexico. And in the general rising numbers of teen depression and suicide. Our community was hit recently with a teenager who committed suicide that kind of really rocked everyone. We're a smaller community here in Santa Fe. So I think in most cases too, the root of the solution can be found at home. Our family, like I said, has firsthand experience with mental illness. Our oldest son, who is now out of the house, struggled immensely his entire childhood, and he still struggles into adulthood. And in the wake of him leaving, the rest of our family has been left to heal and to tend to our own mental health. I think there was a big chunk of time that we were so focused on him that we couldn't really focus on anyone else's needs. So this has now become, like, since he's been gone, probably the most important task for us as a family unit. We believe that we need to face any mental health issues, whether it be trauma or anxiety or depression or eating disorders, whatever, but that we need to face them head on and as early as possible. So I truly, really believe that by tending to the mental health of ourselves and of our families, just as we would tend to the physical health of our bodies, it really paves the way for a more healed and functional family unit, for more joy and connection within our communities, a more fulfilling internal life, and honestly, just a more healed future.
Oh, wow. That was beautiful. Would you?
Well, thank you.
No, so would you encourage parents, like, just from the get-go, don't be afraid to talk about these issues? Or, because would you say in your experience, parents are comfortable talking about mental health issues with their kids? Because I grew up in a home where we didn't talk about mental health anything. And
yeah.
So would you say that this is a newer idea, especially for Americans, to have open conversations?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, the generation before us, like my mom and her siblings, they had a hard time with that. It wasn't normalized. I see it, people in their 60s still refusing help and internalizing old traumas and just letting that eat at them until they're in a place of anger. And I don't want that for myself, and I don't want that for my children. And I think that, a lot of people at our age, I don't know how old you are, but I'm in my 40s, and so is my husband. And I see so many of us really working hard to change that trajectory for ourselves and for our kids. So I think it's really cool, and it's become a lot more acceptable for sure.
Nice. I agree. I feel like I'm seeing that. And even as we're traveling the world here, there, like you said, there's a mental health crisis in America. I think it would even be safe to assume the world at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just everything, which, so yeah, I think having conversations like this and putting them out on platforms, that it almost gives people permission to talk about health. And sometimes I think some parents need that. Like they need the thumbs up. You're allowed to talk to your kids about anxiety. You're allowed to talk to them about an eating disorder that you're concerned you might be seeing. You're allowed to talk about depression symptoms and signs. Like you're allowed, so go for it.
Absolutely. I have to say I have used social media for myself as a way to be very open about our struggles with our son. I know that our current travel Instagram, I don't talk about it quite as much, but over on my personal Facebook and Instagram, we've always been really open. It's not something that we shy away from talking about. And it's always really astounding to me, even on my, our travel Instagram, I recently spoke out on Mental Health Day about our struggles, our son's struggles and our family struggles. And it boggles my mind, the amount of people who reach out and say, oh my gosh, we had this experience, or someone in my family, or I'm experiencing this. And it always sort of just gives me that little nudge of like, yeah, you're doing the right thing by talking about this, more openly. People need to hear it. People need to have it normalized. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that, because I still think that there is a stigma, and as far as we still need to come farther. Like, let's say, and I do think it's a balance, right? Of keeping our private things private versus being public. I do feel, especially with our kids' business, like sometimes our kids might not be that publicized, but like if I'm gonna put on there, like if I'm gonna put on Instagram that I have a fever and I have to take Tylenol for my fever, why would I not put, hey, you know what? Last night I had a major anxiety episode. I couldn't sleep. Like, what's the difference?
Totally. Yeah, there is not a difference. It's just the way that we've been conditioned to talk about it. Yeah. And to speak to the, privacy for our children. Absolutely. especially with my older son, because I am a writer as well. And I write about him quite a bit. And so I always have him read over the things. We read them aloud, even when he was younger, and say, are you okay with me sharing this? And sometimes I've used a pseudonym when I write about him, just to kind of protect his identity when we're talking about some of the more serious stuff. So yeah, I think that there's a way that everyone involved gets to have a say, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. But no, I think normalizing the conversation is so important. And making that a normal topic. Like, if you're going to ask your kids at the dinner table, hey, what'd you learn in school today? How was your day? How was that practice you went to? If you're going to ask these things about their day, why not just pop in there like, how are you feeling today? Like, did you have any mental struggles today?
Totally. Yeah.
Moments today? Did you feel depressed at all today? Like, just throwing those out there for our kids and letting them know that I'm a safe person to talk to. Like, it opens that door for them to know this is an appropriate topic.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, just normalizing it. I love that. So as we normalize this and as we start to talk about it, as we start to lead our families well, what are some of the benefits that come with that? Like, what are some good things that happen in our families when we start leading the mental health of our kids well?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I can see as a benefit is that our children are well, period. I think that there are so many kids and teens in particular that are really suffering with some huge mental health issues, and it's heartbreaking. But like you said, if we can keep the conversation about the importance of mental health an ongoing and regular topic in our homes, we can first smash the stigma surrounding mental health, which is a big one. And if there is a stigma, there is a reluctance to seek help. So you don't want to feel that something is wrong with you, and kids are sensitive to that, teens especially. So by talking about it openly and regularly, that really shifts the conversation in the home. So if we can continue to talk to our kids about it, if we can continue to take the care of our own mental health and not be shy about it, if we can leave the doors open for communication about our emotional and mental well-being, then we are paving the way for our kids to reach out when they need help. So, they're not waiting until they're in a place so dark that they're considering something like suicide or self-harm. And I think that, we as parents are in a unique position to break old cycles and actually change the trajectory of our lineage. And this is what you're talking about, with our parents and stuff like that, not being able to talk about stuff. I know that sounds really weird to say that we can change the trajectory of our lineage, but really think about that. We have the chance to teach these really basic but incredibly powerful tools and habits on taking care of our mental health. And it not only gives our kids a leg up, but it sets the foundation for the generations to come after us. So we model it for our own children, so that they can model it for theirs, and so on. So the benefits really reverberate outward from a family unit into the future, into the community, and of course, into the world at large. I think it's just really powerful when you think about it that way.
Oh my gosh, that is, I don't even have words to talk about how powerful that is. I have like 17 thoughts in my head right now, and they're all like, I'm like, which one do I say first? I relate to what you just said so strongly. The part where the lineage idea. When I think about the fact that I'm raising 4 humans, right? And each of those 4 humans has the potential to create children, and then have grandchildren, and then great grandchildren. Like, they are each like the starting point for something indescribably large.
Yes. Yep.
And that puts me and all parents in an extraordinarily humbling position. Like,
absolutely right.
Like, whoa, like I'm currently raising somebody's future partner. Like, I hope all of my kids, you know, find the love of their life, right? Like, we all, you know, you want that for your kid, right? Like, you know, have the beautiful relationship and have kids. Like, we all want that, you know? And so I want my kid to be like a solid person. Like, I want my boys to be amazing husbands one day. And I want them to know what that means. And I want my girls to be amazing wives one day and actually know what that means. And then if any of them have kids, to be amazing parents. And so just this idea of the lineage is so powerful. Like, it hits me sometimes. I was actually just talking to Eric about it the other day.
It's so cool. And it's something I talk to my therapist about a lot, that we are literally kind of the bridge between the generations, and we get to decide the shift of the future for our family. You know, that has, like I said, it's like a drop in a pond. It just goes out. Those ripples go out. And so, yeah, I want my kids to be super strong in who they are, so that they can come to a relationship knowing their worth and knowing what it feels like, you know, to feel their emotions and be able to deal with that, and to guide their own families through that, and to pick right partners. So we're not, you know, we're not seeking out traumatized partners and trauma bonding and then parenting from a place of trauma. It's really cool when you get to think about it that way, that you have that power.
Yeah. And like you said, having these conversations and having these, just setting this as a culture in our family, then our kids are I don't want to act like, you know, just because you do everything that you feel like you're doing right, that it's going to go in a different way. Like, they
totally.
Right? Like we can do everything. I could be the perfect mom and my kids could still go out there and be a not nice person. But at that point, that's on them. But if we set them up for success, they are more likely to be successful. And if I am solid in who I am, if I am as secure as I can possibly be, and I know what I'm looking for, because I'm not looking for something to fill any holes.
Yes.
And they're not gonna have an awful job, because they're not going to use a job to fill any holes. They're not going to use harmful substances to fill holes. They're not going to use dangerous relationships to fill holes. Like, they're just going to be filled, and then they're going to go out there and have secure relationships and jobs and just more secure lives.
Totally. Yeah.
I think that's so powerful, knowing that, like you said, we have that in us to be able to lead our families in that way. And that it kind of shifts me to this idea of, okay, like, knowing like how important this is, knowing that, okay, we do need to do this. What are some like real practical things that you think parents can do to help make mental health a priority, to help lead their families well in this way? And I know that, you know, like you said, how old is your youngest?
He's going to be 12 in December.
Okay, yeah. So my youngest is 10. And so our ages here. So yeah, we have like a little bit older kids. I do feel like the conversation at this point is going to shift a lot towards kids that can maybe have a little bit of a deeper conversation and understand a little bit of a deeper thought in this category. But I think as we're talking, we can maybe throw in a couple ideas for younger kids.
Totally. Yeah.
Listeners, be aware, we are two moms of older kids.
Totally. Yeah.
Is gonna sit on that a little bit. So what is some advice you would just give to parents in this area of making it a reality?
Yeah. I mean, I think first it goes back to what we were just talking about keeping the conversation about mental health a regular one in the home. I think because of our oldest son, we had a lot of natural openings for those conversations, but we've talked to our kids about mental health and their feelings, what it is, why it's important since I can remember. So that's one. We just simply talk to them and let them know it's okay to come to us if they're feeling some sort of way, or if they have a friend that's not feeling well, that they can come to us with that as well. And this conversation obviously looks different when our kids are little, but that's really when it starts. We can begin by giving them the language to talk about mental health and about their feelings. We can teach them to talk about how those feelings feel in their bodies, because I think that's a lot of the ways that it shows up, and this primes them to talk about it more openly as they get older and the worries of their world get bigger and heavier with more serious consequences. I think the next huge piece of mental health these days is simply this disconnection. And this is where travel as a family really comes into play for us. I think naturally traveling with our children can be a source of connection. It can keep our kids close to us, both physically and also just in a space of connection. It's harder to feel alone, when you're sharing these deep, meaningful experiences with one another. So for us, travel is absolutely a way that we address the general mental health of our family. It's all about connection for us. Nice. And with that being said, I do think that making time to connect with our kids one-on-one is also super important. Obviously, while traveling, this might look like one parent taking one kid out for gelato or attending an activity together. I know I follow on Instagram 4 Almonds Abroad. They're doing a gap year right now with their 2 kids. They have done a really good job of this. I see them sort of breaking off with one kid at a time and engaging in unique activities in whatever location they're in. And so that's been very helpful for me.
She really makes that a priority. I really
Yeah, that's really special and really important, I think, and really can be a great chance to check in a little deeper with that child without the distractions of like the other ones around to mask any issues that might be happening there that aren't quite as obvious. So another thing we've chosen to do personally with our kids is to keep them off social media. I think that social media can be a powerful tool for connection when used correctly, but it can also be a source of stress for kids. It can be a source of stress for adults. So it also has the potential for like this false sense of sharing with this huge community that you're feeling connected to, part of, but really sometimes it can actually be incredibly isolating, if you're like liking or snapping and sharing with all these people, but you're really doing it like, alone in a room and not, it's keeping you from interacting in real life. So there's just too much room for error for us with that. So that's something we've decided as a family that will wait a long time. Our kids get phones when they turn 14, but it's solely for communicating with the people in their real lives. Yeah. It's for texting and calling and not being sucked into the internet. So they don't have access to apps on their phones. I think that's been really helpful. And I know it's a personal choice, and especially with the age of our children, it's really different. But this was actually something that was kind of set in place, not just by us, but it's reinforced in the school program we have them in. We're really conscious about their school, and that's something they talk about there a lot. So
I can just jump in on that. Our kids are also not on social media. And we as a family, we have a family Instagram account, and the kids, like, they'll like do make up reels and that kind of stuff for that at times, but it's all like they're not just on Instagram, like they totally, and then they'll be like, how many people watch it? Like they'll ask me that occasionally, and then they'll but they do not have social media, and my son is 15 and a half.
My son's 15 too.
Like if we were in America, he'd be getting his doing like the whole permit thing, and like people think that we are out there in it. But I completely agree with what you said. I do think that the potential for danger is just higher. And as a way to protect them, we have chosen not to do that. Now, each of our kids either have a phone or an iPad that they can use to communicate with friends and family back in America, because that's important. Like you said, connection really matters. But until it, oh, there we are.
Gotcha.
And so guys, if you have like a 12 or 14, like 12, 13, like they're in that age, right? That tween time of getting the phone or whatever. Don't feel like you have to say yes to everything that a smartphone brings. Just because your kid gets a cell phone doesn't mean they have to be on Instagram or Snapchat or any other social media element. It's okay
Totally.
to notice. It's okay.
And I think,
Yes,
it's our son, our 15-year-old, started high school this year, and their kids are going to school in person here in Santa Fe. And it came up a little bit where he was sort of like, everyone's asking for my Snap account. And even the teachers were assuming that they had internet access on their phone, and our kids have Gab phones, so they just don't even have internet access. But he kind of asked, can I have Instagram? And it's something that we did seriously sit down and talk about. And in the end, we were just like, not yet, and he was okay with that. And, sometimes it's going to be a little weird, and definitely people probably think we're strange. And I don't think we present as these like total hippies or anything, but we are we're pretty open and like free range in a lot of ways, but we're pretty strict around that one with our kids.
I think what you said, especially as our kids are older, is important. Having that conversation. Because if we just look at our 14, 15-year-old and say, no, you're not having social media, they're just going to resent us. And then the second to get on social media, they're going to go bazonkers. Like they're not going to know how to handle it well. Or they're going to try to find a way to sneak behind your back and get it. Like
totally. Yeah.
That's just a fact. Like, I don't want to pretend that all kids but I know I have, like, of my 4 kids, I know at least 2 that would attempt to go behind my back and get a hidden social media account if they felt I was just being totally unrealistic about it. They were really hard for that. And so you just have to think about your kid and just have that conversation and just go, why do you think you should have Instagram? Why do you think you should have Snapchat? Okay, well, that's your reasoning. Here's why I think you shouldn't.
Totally. We don't want to just have arbitrary rules because this is how we did it or this is how we decided. We always want to leave conversations open so we can hear their side as well.
I love that. I love that you said that.
I think, going back to how, or the benefits or ways of how we can manage mental health. I think that we outsource. Our kids are in therapy. Our second son struggled with intense anxiety for a while, and he actually is discharged from therapy after he learned some new techniques to address it. So he has found that being outdoors and active really curbs his anxiety. So he utilizes conscious breathing or mindfulness when he needs some extra help. So it's really cool because those things are easy to take on the road with you. And when we transition to full-time travel next year, I expect that those are tools he may lean on a little bit more. And it's great because, there are guided meditations and stuff like that online. And there's literally apps for that and YouTube videos. It's pretty cool how accessible that is. My younger ones are still working through some trauma issues from their oldest brother, but therapy has really helped them. And for my daughter, who was really struggling with depression a little more deeply, she made the choice to medicate. And I know that is a really personal choice for everyone. I myself am medicated, and it's actually, been an actual lifesaver for me. So when my daughter started talking about the intensity of her depression and that she was really open to wanting to talk about and consider medication, we made sure to find a really strong practitioner that could talk to her at her level, about the pros and cons about medication, how the medication actually worked in her brain, and how it's not only the solution necessarily, but that it's just one of the tools in the toolbox necessary to get the job done for her to be healthy, right? And I think one of the perks of the pandemic really was that remote therapy and medication management had become sort of normal. So we've started talking already to our therapists and doctors about how that will look like when we're on the road full time. It's doable. I'm really thankful that we'll have that extra support too. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, where to start again? I have 100 thoughts because you are just so smart and you make me like come up with all these things that I'm like, yes, you're right. I agree 100% that finding like ways that help you personally. So if medication is going to help you, please take medication. Find the correct medication. Talk to your doctor. Talk to your psychologist if you're going that route. Whatever route you go, but definitely don't be embarrassed or ashamed or feel any negative pressure that comes with the idea of taking an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety.
Totally.
Nothing wrong with that at all. I have personally been on antidepressants, and I agree, they are life-saving. They can be so helpful. For me, I know when I was taking them, I was at a place I didn't even have the mental capacity to work on myself.
Yes.
And getting on an antidepressant for me, it was like, it almost like put my brain almost like in a wheelchair, or like,
yes,
like the ability to just rest. And then it got strong. You know how like sometimes you have to put someone in like a medically induced coma because that's what's best for them?
Yes.
That's what it did to my brain. Like, and I don't want you listeners to think that I didn't like feel anything. I felt so fantastic because all the bad stuff was getting less. And then I was able to get strong, and then I could work on myself.
Totally. Yeah. I think that sometimes medication can absolutely give you access to the tools you need to do the real work. And, you know, the way I explain it to people is it is not going to fix it, but it can lift some of those feelings that are keeping you bogged down that you can't access. I know for me, like when I was really depressed or having debilitating anxiety, that I couldn't use the things that I know I needed to get better. And, you know, now I can. So that's how we talk about it with our kids, is like, this is just one of the many tools to get you in a place. And in fact, the other day we had a follow-up with my daughter's doctor, and on the way there, she said, "Thank you, Mom, for helping me get on medication. I didn't realize even how bad I was feeling until I came out of it." And I think sometimes you can't see like how dark it is until you step out of the shadows. Yeah. So that was huge. That really, because, you know, I even though we're very open and I totally believe that medication is something that there shouldn't be shame about, there still is like a part of me that really has a hard time putting my children on medication. It's definitely not our first go-to, but, you know, with the severity of where things are getting, we're totally there and we're fine with it and everyone's feeling good about it. Yeah.
Because I think, something that I think people like you and me that are very comfortable and educated in the idea of mental health, we remember things and we know things that maybe you don't. So if you're listening to this and you're kind of like confused, it's like, why do you have to go on an antidepressant? Depression and anxiety it's an actual hormonal imbalance in your brain. So how I explain it to people that don't understand is I relate it directly to diabetes. Diabetes is actually a hormonal disorder, because insulin is a hormone in our body. So would you ever look at someone that had a child who was severely diabetic and chastise them for putting that child on an insulin pump or anything like that? No, you would look at them and you would say, you did exactly the right thing as that child's parent. Depression and anxiety are also hormonal-based disorders. And the medication is a hormonal leveler, and it fixes the hormone levels inside of our brains. So then that way we can get to a place where we're strong and we can do the work.
Totally. Yeah, that's important. That we actually relate it to diabetes a lot in our house too.
I think it's you're looking at two hormone-based disorders. It's just with one, with diabetes, there's no shame, but with anxiety and depression, we do feel this shame. And if you're not going to be ashamed of putting your kid on an insulin pump, don't be ashamed for antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is what it is. And the great thing is these medications work.
Yes.
like hearing about your daughter, it's working. Like,
yeah,
like
I think
as a mom,
it's very cool to see, like, when you go in and you fill out kind of the symptom chart where you're rating how you're feeling, and for her to tangibly be able to see, like, wow, here's where I was reporting a month ago and here's where I'm reporting now. That was really powerful for her. And, the doctor talked to her about, yeah, she said, I'm, talking about not feeling things. I never don't feel things. I just can manage the emotions. And she said, yes, I'm still sometimes feeling this way, but it passes. And the doctor was like, yes, because the medication is helping it not be so sticky. And that's where the depression and the anxiety and that can become a problem when those stick and you can't get out of those places.
yeah. So I want to just jump in again and talk about, you talked about counseling. If you're listening to this and you're like, this is about traveling, COVID opened the doors, people. Like,
yeah.
COVID was awful. COVID sucks. I'm never going to say that I'm happy that COVID, no. But did good things come out of a horrible world event? Yes. And online therapy is one of them. If you are connected already to a counselor and you're getting ready to become a nomadic family, do what Tiphini is doing and talk to them and say, hey, we don't want to lose you. Can we transition to a Zoom meeting? Can we do, like, what can we do to keep you? If you are already traveling and you're noticing, like, you know what, I do think we need to outsource this because in our family, I want to be a mom, not a therapist. I don't. I have told each and every single one of my kids this. I want to be your mom, not your therapist. We actually utilize a company called Teen Counseling, and it's online based. The price is amazing, and it's actually from the creators of BetterHelp.
Yep, I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's an adult counseling. They created one called Teen Counseling. Teenagers. So if you are listening to this and you're already traveling, you don't have a relationship with the therapist, I'm going to leave a link in the show notes to teen counseling. We have a kid that uses it. She has a counselor. They have a meeting once a week, but she can also send text messages or voice messages anytime she needs to. So if she's having a moment that she needs to reach out, she just grabs the phone and shoots a message. And it's been very helpful to have that resource.
That's awesome. I'm going to have to save that one. I didn't realize that they had that.
Yeah, relatively new. So our daughter started when we were in Poland, which was in March.
Oh, okay.
March, yeah. So we've been with the company, like using the company. Like we're not affiliated with them. Like we just, and so we've been like using them since March, and we've used them in multiple countries now. So
cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it gives our daughter a way to have a consistent therapist while we're traveling. So
totally.
So yeah, don't be afraid to outsource, people. I think it's understanding this balance of, yeah, we do need to like take the leadership of their mental health seriously, but if I'm going to outsource like to a doctor with their physical health, I'm going to outsource to someone smarter than me as far as their mental health goes as well. Like
totally.
A counselor, like I am all for finding people smarter than me and just sitting down and going, tell me what to do. Like that is what I prefer to do. So what would you say to a family if they're struggling in this area? What are your words of encouragement, or like what would you just tell them if they looked at you and they said, Tiphini, it's not great here in this house. We know we're not leading well in this area. We know our kids are struggling. What should we do?
Again, I mean, I think the first thing we can do is really preemptive. It's to keep the doors of communication open and to create that connection and moments of connection with our kids so that when something is going on, they're comfortable coming to us with that, and checking in with our partners too, of course. The next step is of course, identifying if it's an issue that needs immediate attention. Is this acute? Is there an immediate risk? If so, those are things we treat like the emergency they are. So I would urge people, depending on where you're at, some places have mental health crisis response teams. If it gets to be, like a super crisis situation, we have had situations like that with our oldest son several times. They come to you, and sometimes you can avoid, like an ER visit. For us, when we're in those acute situations, we really tap in first the support systems we already have in place. So again, it's totally important to be preemptive with mental health, I think. And a last resort, but important one if it comes to that, is of course an emergency room visit. So when traveling, being aware of like where those places are, or if the local hospital maybe has a mental health unit, those things are really important. Less acute than that, I think it's helping our kids figure out what the source is and like what they might need. Are they feeling too disconnected from their peers, which is, I think, a real possibility when you're traveling, especially with older kids whose social worlds are so imperative to their development. How can we reconnect them with that? Can we facilitate a FaceTime date? And can we somehow get a visit in? Can we maybe readjust our travel itinerary to swing through an area where there's a familiar face for them? Or, if that's not possible, what ways can we help them find new community in the place that we're in? And like I talked about, the toolkit, helping kids to kit out a toolbox for themselves is so important. So identifying who their trusted person is big, who they want to talk to when things are feeling hard. It might be us, it might be another trusted adult, it might be a friend or a sibling. I mentioned that my son uses mindfulness. Can we help them add that to their toolbox? My daughter finds a lot of solace in drawing and writing or journaling. Sometimes she doesn't want to talk to me about something, but she can write it and feel comfortable sharing it that way. So, if they don't feel like talking to us, also there are crisis lines that they can call. We have those numbers on the fridge at our house, but you can keep them accessible while traveling too. Maybe they just need to talk to someone anonymously for a minute. And all of those things are so important to empower our kids to also take the care of their mental health into their own hands too. And again, of course, there are times when parents will need to intervene. So this is where outsourcing is helpful. Therapists, medication when needed, alternative therapies, like we've done cranial sacral work, acupuncture, acupressure, your spiritual community, herbs, whatever works for you as kind of the first line of defense. These are things that we can help facilitate for our kids when they need that extra help.
Yes. I think that is all very, very good. I think this idea of helping our kids create a toolbox so that they can start being the leaders in their own mental health journeys is so important. So if you are, if you haven't taken the leadership of the mental health of your family seriously up to this point, I never think that there's a too late moment.
No, never. Yeah.
You can start now, Does that mean you have to do everything? No, that's going to freak your kids out, I think. Like if you just jump in and you start having insanely deep conversations about mental health and everything, I think that could maybe make your kids wonder what's going on. Start with one thing, like start asking questions about how they're feeling, or even just like asking them, what makes you happy? What makes you scared? Like just these very generic questions can just start to build this bridge of trust in our mental health leadership with our kids. So if this is if mental health issues are something that your kids are comfortable talking with you already, then you can start talking about, okay, here's the specific things that this kid needs, that this kid needs, that this kid needs, and equipping them with that toolbox idea, like one-on-one. And I do think that having these conversations as a family unit are important, but also having them one-on-one with our kids. And so as a nomadic family, it is harder to find those moments to be alone with your kids, but not impossible. I know for us, grocery shopping is actually a really big go. I grab one kid and I'm like, hey, you're just going to go grocery shopping with me today. It's not fancy. And we usually like grab a Coke Zero, and we just kind of chit chat while we're walking through the markets and everything. And it's a great way to just do a casual check-in.
Totally. Those informal moments are really, I noticed for me, it's always when we're in the car, my kids want to talk. So any chance I can get one kid in the car, otherwise they're just, all going berserk and driving me nuts, but just one kid in the car. And suddenly we're talking about something super deep, and it's always astounding. I think another piece that I didn't talk about is modeling for our kids. I know my husband and I both work with life coaches. I regularly take time for myself, and that's huge. I really, as a parent, we take so much time caretaking that we often forget to prioritize our own stuff sometimes. But I think showing our kids how we take care of ourselves is important. I really believe that it's the foundation of a healthy family unit is to have, of course, having healthy parents, having healthy, happy, and fulfilled parents, particularly mothers. And so I personally invest a lot of time in my own mental health, and I think it's a worthwhile investment. I think I've seen, and my husband has acknowledged, the positive ramifications it's had on our family. I have when we're at home, I have a weekly self-care day, and it's not expensive. I don't have to go get a massage or a pedicure. Sometimes it's whatever is bringing me joy in that day. It's maybe I'm taking myself to lunch. I'm giving myself permission to take care of my own needs. And that's so important for our kids to say or see. I think, I also, community is huge for me. I immerse myself in community for myself, I create community for my kids. We've been really intentional with that here in Santa Fe. It's something we're going to have to work hard on when we're traveling. But, for me, I do group trips, and I hosted a retreat recently too. And there's something so magical that happens when you allow yourself without guilt time to take care of your needs. And it's so powerful when our kids see us doing that too. And it is another way to normalize, I need to take care of myself. And I see my mom and my dad doing that for themselves. This is normal.
And I think both sides are important to model, right? The positive side of it, I am going to prioritize my mental health, but also acknowledging the moments where we're struggling. And so I know
totally.
Since the six of us in my family are together all the time. It's just all the time, right? Unless I go grocery shopping or something solo, I'm with people. And I don't want anyone to hear what I'm not saying. I love my people. I would choose to be with the 5 people I'm with voluntarily. I love them, and I like them. So I would hang out with them. But any time you're with the same people, it doesn't matter if you're family or friends, you're going to get on each other's nerves. That's just a fact. And acknowledging the moments where I'm struggling, whether it's with anxiety, whether it's with some depression, whether it's with another stressor, acknowledging that to my kids. Just the other day, they were triggering a lot of my anxiety. I have generalized anxiety disorder, but I also have a lot of childhood trauma. And so it's pretty easy for me to get triggered in certain parenting elements. And I was getting a lot of triggers. And I just looked at them and I'm like, and I know it's a me thing, right? They're not doing it on purpose. They don't even know that they're doing it. And I looked at them and I was like, hey guys, I love you really a lot right now. I'm struggling. I'm just going to go sit outside for 5 minutes. And if you guys could just leave me alone, that'd be great.
Yes.
And yep. And they weren't offended. They weren't mad. But what's going to be better? Me just telling them, hey, you know what? I'm really having a hard time right now. I felt the anxiety coming up. And for me, when everyone, experiences anxiety differently and then expresses it differently. For me, I get angry. And I hate that. I
do too.
Yeah, but if I'm anxious inside, I'm angry outside. And I don't want to be angry with kids for no reason. But it's easier for me to yell. It's easier for me to have those snippy moments. if I'm experiencing anxiety. So I just acknowledge to them, hey, you know what? I want to be the best mom possible. And right now, being best mom is fighting with being anxious mom. So I got to go take care of anxious mom. Like, got to go simmer down, and then I can be the best mom. But they don't live together. Like,
nope.
so,
Yeah, I think that's so important too. I mean, we're not, of course, placing like burden on our kids to fix how we're feeling, but communicating with them that we are having these feelings and this is how we're taking care of it. And like, maybe I just need some space right now. I know for me, one of the triggers for my anxiety is sensory input. I get overstimulated, and then I get like kind of angry and snappy. And so, yeah, I'll tell the kids, hey, right now I'm feeling super overstimulated, or I'm like really hungry right now. And so I want to listen to you, but I can't right now. Or like, I'm just feeling like maybe I'm going to start getting grumpy. So could you just like go in another room for a few minutes or whatever? And yeah, they totally respond. They're totally fine with it because you're talking to them like a human, like you're a human and they're a human. And yeah, they don't want to, it's way worse if you just like start freaking out on them and they don't know why.
Yeah, exactly. They would, I promise you, your kids would rather you look at them and say, I need a 5-minute, 10-minute mom break versus get frustrated with them because they accidentally spilled some water on the counter. Like,
totally.
I promise you they would prefer the first one. Like,
yeah.
So modeling, okay, here's how I'm going to be proactive in my mental health, but also here's how I'm going to face those hard moments in my struggle. How do I handle like the burden that hits me sometimes? Like if these things come at me, how am I going to handle that? So yeah, I think modeling is huge. So if you, as a listener right now, if you aren't super involved in your own mental health journey, start there. Like,
yeah, that's probably the best and easiest place to start. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think starting with yourself so you can model it well. And then you can start being the best leader of your family's mental health as possible. So
absolutely.
Well, Tiphini, I think that's a good place to stop. I feel like I just like consumed like a PhD level of
just mom level, just life experience.
I love it. Go ahead, before we jump off, I always like for the guests to share how people can connect with you or follow you or anything like that in a way that you're comfortable with them doing so. So if people want to learn more about you and your family and your journey coming up, I'm so excited for you guys. What should they do?
So we are on Instagram. We are the Explorers. So the _AXPLORERS. Yeah, that's how you spell it. And that's where we're sharing all of our kind of our travel stuff. And we do a lot of exploring, in the Southwest where we are. And then of course we'll be sharing our big journey. And then I also have theexplorers.com. I'm building it out right now. You can just sign up for a mailing list. That's where my women's retreats live. I just had my first one. I'm planning my second. So yeah, you can access me on both those places.
Nice. Those will be linked in the show notes, guys. And if you want to get like major like wanderlust for Southwest America, you are the place to go. Because like every time you I'm like, oh, I want to see that. Like stuff so much.
I love to hear it. I think New Mexico is such an underrated state and I love sharing it. And it's been so cool to see people react like, oh my gosh, I didn't know New Mexico looked like that. Like it's just started snowing outside, guys. It snows in New Mexico. We're not the desert. We're at 7,000 feet elevation.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah.
Mexico was never on a list of places I wanted to go. And then ever since I started following you on Instagram, I'm like, and we have to like live there, I think. Like,
see, well, that my job is done.
And check done.
And done. Yep.
Well, thank you so much, guys. Seriously, go to the show notes and just do all the things with Tiphini and her family because you will not regret it. Sign up for the mailing list for their website for sure. And Tiphini, I want to say thank you so much for just being open and vulnerable and being willing to talk about a subject that it does have stigma. And we do need to keep working to bring this stigma down, and for sharing your amazing knowledge with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for creating the space for this conversation to continue on a broader spectrum. Yeah, I appreciate it.
No worries. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.